Of Murray Walker and James Hunt. They're coming up to the start right now.
4 turbos on the first 2 rows of the grid, and that is going to make potentially for some bunching behind them if they are not all getting away very quickly, which they still don't always do due to the throttle lag because of the turbos. Pironi on the left then. On the right of your screen, René Arnoux. Behind Pironi in the yellow Renault is Alain Prost. Then Nelson Piquet. The red lights are on. Any second now they'll go to green. And the Canadian Grand Prix is on, and straight through comes Prost. And up into the lead goes Arnoux, and crash at the back. And this is the sort of thing that unfortunately happens all too often now. Will the race be stopped? It looks like one of the, it's Salazar on the right, and out immediately is Paletti. And on the left, a car that I'm just losing sight of. And that's Jarier's car. I think almost certainly the race is going to be stopped again, as it was in 1980.
Yes, well, they should really have time to clear that out of the way. And of course, they've got the driver still trapped in there, and they need to work on the car. It looks as if just removing his helmet there. Oops, and they get that fire extinguisher. Oh dear, they haven't got enough fire extinguishers. They've got a problem here. Dear, oh dear.
Well, it looks as though, thank heavens, they're on top of it on the near side of the car. The driver still in the car, and it's Paletti, I think. It's certainly one of the Osella cars. Maximum force. Meantime, the red flags will be out around the circuit, hopefully, to stop the race with this appalling cataclysm at the start. A repetition almost of 1980, except for the fire.
Yes, that's Didier Pironi there in the red driving suit, who's around there trying to help. But they've got a lot of problems with that fire. It's the trouble with the petrol fire. They're so difficult to put out. You think they're out, and then they flash back. That's a big fire. It doesn't look at all good.
And the thing that is amazing me, quite apart from the fire, is how Pironi can be there. He must have stopped instantaneously. Didn't get away off the grid. That's the answer. And and we still don't know whether it's Paletti or Jarier that is in that car.
Yes, one of the problems, of course, with all this fire extinguisher foam going onto that fire, that is also noxious for the driver and can be extremely dangerous if inhaled. And with that amount, it looks like he's going to be inhaling a lot of that. At the moment, the race hasn't been stopped, but that's most extraordinary because the cars...
Now we've got a red, and of course drivers will suddenly come into this smoke, not realising that there are officials right across the circuit. There are crash wagons there, as you can see for yourselves.
Well, a disaster there, Ken, by the look of things. It looks like Pironi stalled his car on the start, and as we've seen so often in the past, when there's been a stalled car on the grid, these drivers have difficulty.
Prost comes
They're
out
all
from behind
finding their way back, but what happens is the cars at the back, by the time they get there, they're going quicker, and now somebody's heading pretty well straight for it. So far they've got through, and
there's the impact.
That looks like Paletti's car. He's hit it very hard. He's spinning round.
Yeah, there's another car, actually, the one that's spinning off now, and I'm just trying to
Paletti,
identify.
there's a car further back that hit it pretty well head-on.
I think it's Jeff Lees, actually, that made the contact first of all. There's Lees. There is Lees going off on the right, so the car going off on the left, I suspect, is not Jan Lammers, because he was to have driven the Theodore, and it's been driven by Jeff Lees, Jan Lammers having broken his thumb earlier on in practice. And now you see the unfortunate Paletti still trapped in the car while the flames are roaring up round him.
I would say that he's unconscious, Murray, because...
Since it came to Montreal in 1978, Gilles Villeneuve, Alan Jones, who's sitting in Australia, won twice in 1979 and 1970-80. Villeneuve won in 1978, and I well remember the magnificent race that Alan Jones had against Villeneuve. And Jacques Lafitte, as you have seen, won last year. But now, who is going to win this year? Shortly, there's Piquet in the rejuvenated Brabham BMW, fourth fastest on the grid, second row of the grid, and he is behind René Arnoux. You see Piquet's Brabham BMW just peeping out. Now they're off on the warm-up.
Difficult for the cars at the back to see something in advance unless there's actually cars flying about all over the place. One stationary car with all those cars in the way gives you no clear view. You see how the cars are in line astern. Imagine being 10th in that queue. You'd never see the person at the front.
Almost exactly 2 hours after the race first started, 2 hours and 3 minutes, there are the starting lights for the second start. On the right, Arnoux. On the left, Pironi. Behind Arnoux is Piquet. Behind Pironi is Prost. And for the second time, it is go. And this time, Pironi does get away. A clean start. Arnoux tucks in behind him. Pironi third. Giacomelli coming out well in fourth position. Nelson Piquet seems to have got away slowly. One laggard at the end, but it is Pironi leading. It is Arnoux in second position. It is Alain Prost in third place. And in fourth place, it is Piquet, Nelson Piquet, the world champion in the Brabham BMW. There he is in fourth position. And it's still, as they go into the S-bend, the Ferrari. Then Arnoux, Prost, Piquet, Giacomelli and Roberto Guerrero getting away late on the ensign, car number 14. And he wants a push. He's gesturing to say, give me a push and restart me. And there's a bit of consultation with the officials. Meantime, Pironi goes on. Arnoux pulling away from Prost. Piquet holding on in fourth position. And in fifth position is Giacomelli. Sixth is John Watson. So the Italian going well in the V12 Alfa Romeo. Behind John Watson is one of the Williams. I expect it's Keke Rosberg, and already off is Brian Henton. On the first lap in the Tyrrell, Brian Henton is off, his car being craned off, so Brian Henton's race hasn't lasted very long. His third Grand Prix in the Tyrrell.
Yes, that's bad. That, looking at the tyre marks there and the marks on the grass, it looks as if he arrives in that position sideways, so some sort of a spin or coming together with another car. It's always very crowded on the first lap, so it's quite possible there was a little bit of bunching up. There go the leaders. They went away absolutely in grid order. Watson trying to get inside those two very similarly coloured Marlborough cars, was trying to get inside Giacomelli, but I think failed.
And superbly through into the lead goes René Arnoux, whose car obviously handles better than the Ferrari. The Renaults have been beautifully set up. They've got a better chassis than the Ferrari. Nelson Piquet is up into third position ahead of Alain Prost. And now is Didier Pironi, and it's not only the fact that the Ferrari chassis is not as good as the Renault in the first place. I remind you, as James was saying, that he's driving a car in which he will not have had the time to set it up as well as he did his original race car. So Renault leads, Ferrari second, Brabham third, Renault in fourth position in the hands of Alain Prost. Then a gap, and it looks like Giacomelli and one of the Williams has moved up, I think, into sixth position. Lap 2 in this 70-lap race.
Yes, here we see them coming down to the hairpin. The Renault still behind Pironi, Arnoux, but he got him accelerating away from here as they ran up to the next corner. There's the two Marlborough cars fighting away. Watson trying to get inside Giacomelli, didn't. There's another pair going side by side. And here they are with Arnoux having just slipped inside with better acceleration than the Ferrari. And at that point, Piquet is still behind Prost, but he has since overtaken me, and I would back Piquet to get past the Ferrari pretty soon. I think he's perfectly placed. If he can just copy, but he doesn't get the power down quite so well. If he can just copy what Arnoux did on the last lap.
Well, and Piquet really thirsty for points, and here he goes. He's going to try and take him on the inside.
And I saw an accident in the background, yes, and the hairpin moved back to the hairpin.
Giacomelli and Nigel Mansell. Giacomelli and Nigel Mansell right astride the course. Giacomelli's offside front wheel tipped over. It's going to be difficult to push the car out of the way, and it is actually on the racing line. Heavens, they are not surely going to have to stop this Canadian Grand Prix again for the second time. Well, the Alfa is obviously stuck. Look, the whole of the offside rear wheel is flat, and Nigel Mansell's car is on the runoff line.
They just need more men. Giacomelli showing a bit of Italian temperament there, having a little kick at his car. Very frustrating, of course, for a driver coming out of that. And Arnoux, meanwhile, is pulling away a very healthy lead.
Second. Piquet out to second, ahead of Pironi. Prost in fourth position. Well, and suddenly they are going to come upon Giacomelli's Alfa Romeo and Nigel Mansell's JPS, and Prost is now past Pironi, so Pironi's charge didn't last very long because Prost is up into third position. Down to fourth goes Pironi.
I don't think they can possibly stop the race for that. Even if they have the car, they should be able to move it once the field had gone past one lap. They just simply were short of manpower because those cars are not very heavy. It's about 4 people can easily lift that corner enough to drag the car out of the way. It only needs to be manned down 6.
And Eddie Cheever in sixth position behind Giacomelli. Eddie Cheever, who drove so well at Detroit to finish in second place last week in second position, and now doubtless the manpower and the muscle will be applied to Giacomelli's Alfa Romeo to try and get it off the circuit before they come round for another lap, and they're now on lap 4. There is Arnoux pulling away. Piquet's got a clear circuit in front of him, second position. Alain Prost up to third, Didier Pironi in fourth place, and I can tell you that Keke Rosberg in the Williams is in trouble. There's Pironi, Giacomelli in fifth position. There is Cheever, who is sixth. And Patrese. There is Rosberg. No, Rosberg looks as though he's going all right. Rosberg is all right, I think. No problem there.
Yes, I saw a little puff of smoke, I thought, out of the back of Rosberg's car as accelerating away. Somebody just putting in there. I couldn't see clearly who it was.
Well, let's identify. There is Patrese being chased by number 6, Keke Rosberg in the Williams. We are on lap 4 out of 70. And it is still very much in the lead as this, what looks like a slower bunch, although heaven knows they're going quickly enough. Patrese chased by Keke Rosberg, and here they come towards us now. Patrese, Rosberg, that's Niki Lauda, then De Angelis, then Jacques Lafitte. And the yellow flags are out. That means there's trouble ahead.
They're still clearing those cars. They've managed to get the track itself clear, but yes, just to warn people that there are cars in the vicinity and working, probably, marshals working.
Meantime, we're watching the battle behind the leaders, and it is still René Arnoux with the fastest lap so far, 1 minute 32.2, and that's a speed of 107 miles an hour, as near as makes no difference, and that is inside the lap record with full tanks. And here is René Arnoux, who, as I said earlier on, is long overdue for a win. Roberto Guerrero touring into the pits, another very hard luck man. He has yet to finish a Grand Prix, and this is his first season of Grand Prix racing. Arnoux leads. There in second place, Piquet. You see the gap. There in third is Alain Prost. The fourth place man now, Didier Pironi. Then Giacomelli, then Cheever. And there goes Arnoux. Piquet, lap 5. Well, will the Renaults last? Because so often we have seen them do well in practice. And what is this? There's a stretcher going out. Who's it for?
Looks like somebody in the crowd. Probably there seems to be taking that into the crowd. Yes, so some drama amongst the very lively Canadian crowd.
Well, meantime, we're trying to ident. It's either a marshal or a spectator, no doubt about that. René Arnoux then, now on lap 6 in this 70-lap race, coming up to 1/10 distance. Yeah, it's a marshal. Looks as though he's got overalls on. What a dramatic, eventful and tragic Canadian Grand Prix this is so far, for one reason or another. And since Giacomelli is out of the running, I have made an incorrect ident, and I apologise for it. It is clearly John Watson who is in 5th place, as René Arnoux laps. It looks like it's Guerrero. Guerrero, who went into the pits, has presumably come out again. Meantime, there is Arnoux leading.
Guerrero just seems to be providing a bit of an unnecessary hazard, really, by being out in the circuit going slowly. Already a lap or two down, because remember we had a shot of him being slowly away and needing a push right at the start of the race.
Yes, Roberto Guerrero, the Colombian, one of the many South Americans who are in top Grand Prix racing these days. But René Arnoux is now being caught, no doubt about it. René Arnoux is being caught. I'll give you the gap between himself and Nelson Piquet, and the gap is 2.4 seconds only at the conclusion of lap 6. Then Prost and Pironi, and Watson going through, followed by Eddie Cheever. And here they are. There's Pironi, there's Watson. That's the turbocharged Ferrari, with the Detroit Grand Prix winner tucked up tight behind him. Then Eddie Cheever, who was second.
Yes, Watson will now be looking very hard for and there's Cheever having a go at Watson. He gets inside Watson, and that will be very... and Watson slowly through the corner is being attacked by De Cesaris, I think.
Yes.
Who succeeds in getting by, so that is a major blow for John Watson's hopes, because he was really in a big hurry to get past the Ferrari. His little fight there with Cheever slowed him down enough to drop another place, so Watson drops 2 places, but he was really looking hard to make up 1, because, as usual, the Ferrari is building up a train behind it. This car, we didn't expect to go that well in the race, not having had the set-up time. It would have been given to the race car. The race car was damaged in that most regrettable incident on the start. And anyway, it's now up to Cheever to take on the important role of being first past the Ferrari. And of course, that could be a great advantage. You can get a bit of space ahead of it while everybody else gets stuck waiting to go past. So Cheever will be looking hard, but not easy. A lot of straights on this circuit. It's a bit of a power circuit, because you've got plenty of... It's all acceleration and braking down these from slow corners down these straights. And the Ferrari, of course, excels in this department.
Welcome back to the Canadian Grand Prix. As we rejoin, we've just seen Nelson Piquet take René Arnoux for the lead. The ambulance that we saw a little earlier on wasn't for a spectator. Indeed, it was for Nigel Mansell, and we haven't been brought up to date on just why he's been put on the ambulance, but as soon as we do hear, we'll let you know. We now return you back to James Hunt and Murray Walker in Canada.
Pushed or nudged into racing it, shall we say, before they really wanted to. They wanted to get the reliability of the car well, and this is a big test for it. So far the car hasn't run for very long distance, but it will, in fact, they've been improving the reliability all the time. They've got more and more miles, so hopefully we'll see if Piquet can go the distance.
On lap 9, then, Nelson Piquet leads René Arnoux, and you see them taking the hairpin. In third position and coming down to it now is Alain Prost in the second of the two Renaults. In fourth position now, as the leader goes through, is Eddie Cheever in the Talbot, who has displaced Didier Pironi in the Ferrari, and behind him, as into the pits comes Jacques Lafitte in the Talbot. But Eddie Cheever is driving as well here in Canada as he did in Detroit, and they are driving, both he and Lafitte, who has just gone into the pits, the comparatively old JS17 Talbot, because the new JS19, which was produced at Monaco, is still not being raced, and it's the old car. This is the car that won last year. There is Cheever, the young American-Italian, but he's lived most of his life in Italy, ex-kart champion, drove in over 50 Formula 2 races, and he's really got the bit between his teeth now in Formula 1, now that he's got a car that is worthy of his talents. There is De Cesaris chasing Cheever, and he has displaced Pironi.
Yes, that's De Cesaris through as well, so it'll be interesting to see. The Alfa goes particularly well on circuits like these. It's really a very good car. They're having a terrific season. De Cesaris has certainly wiped clean, or mostly clean, the very bad slate he made for himself last year by crashing a record number of times during his season with McLaren's, but he's been going much better, and Pironi's coming under a little bit of pressure from Patrese. Patrese is getting inside him, yes, and there goes Patrese into the hairpin, past Pironi. He just needs to accelerate him now enough to stay in front, but it looks like it. Pironi's car particularly slow around the hairpin there, difficult. It must have been finding it very hard to get the power, and he lost a huge amount. And Watson going pretty slowly, he's being pushed backwards and was following behind the Ferrari. We just had a shot of him in the background.
And because I had a bit of brain fade earlier on, let me just establish the fact that Nigel Mansell went off earlier on, and we understand unofficially that he has a broken arm. Nigel Mansell we saw being put into the ambulance. It was definitely him, and unofficially a broken arm, as Riccardo Patrese we see taking Didier Pironi, who is undoubtedly suffering from the fact that he's driving the spare car and not the one that he originally started the Canadian Grand Prix when the race first started today, before it was stopped because of the Paletti incident. So lap 10 now, this is 1/7 distance, and there is the race leader, world champion Nelson Piquet, whose dedication and patience in developing the Brabham Turbo, which he determined to do, seems to be paying off. Second, René Arnoux, who's hanging on well to Nelson Piquet, both of them pulling away from the man who's third in the World Championship, Alain Prost, in the second of the two turbocharged Renaults. Then, now up into fourth position, as you know, in the Talbot, Eddie Cheever. So, turbos first, second and third, then the V12 Matra-powered Talbot of Eddie Cheever. Behind him, in fifth position, is De Cesaris in the Alfa Romeo, and in sixth position, Riccardo Patrese, ahead of now Didier Pironi, who is out of the World Championship points situation. And as far as the World Championships is concerned, it's John Watson who is leading the championship and is still out of the top 6 places. He's been slipping down through the field. But this is the interest and the excitement, as Nelson Piquet, who comes from Brasilia and is driving after 10 years experience in his 55th Grand Prix, having won 6 of them and finished second in the World Championship in 1980 to Alan Jones, and with a lot of kart and saloon and all kinds of racing experience behind him, is now leading in a Brabham BMW for the first time this season. He drove in South Africa, this car, but had to retire.
Well, Piquet, if anything, Arnoux a bit closer at the end of this lap than he was 1 lap ago. Piquet trying hard to get away, but he was inching away, making a bit of an impression, only inching, and that seems to have stopped now, so it looks like we're on for a pretty hard battle between these two, as long as both the cars remain in the same state of apparent good health, which they now appear to enjoy. And Arnoux is definitely a little bit closer again, so it looks as if, as I say, we've got a battle.
On lap 12, there is a 1.4 seconds gap between the 1.5-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged BMW Brabham of the race leader, Nelson Piquet, and the 1.5-litre V6 Renault of the second of these two cars, driven by René Arnoux. And they are definitely pulling away from Alain Prost. There is no doubt in my mind that given, and definitely that Arnoux is gaining a bit. I was going to say that Arnoux is definitely a quicker driver than Prost, but he hasn't been able to prove it this season because the cars let him down so very often. But Nelson Piquet is showing him the way as they come round to complete the 12th lap very shortly. Prost third, still. Then behind Alain Prost, it is still Eddie Cheever in 4th position. In 5th position, it's still De Cesaris. In 6th position, it is still Riccardo Patrese. So, with the lap completed, that's the end of lap 12. Now, the gap as they go over the line there is still 1.45 seconds. So Piquet's increased his lead by the small amount of 5/100ths of a second in that lap.
Welcome back to the 1982 Canadian Grand Prix from Montreal. We have 3 turbo cars still leading the race, with Pico leading from Arnoux from Prost. You may have noticed a little bit earlier on that the Ferrari was having very large brake ducts on the back of the car, and this particular circuit presents big braking problems for the turbo cars. I've been noticing that under very heavy braking, Piquet's car, the rear of his car, has been braking away just slightly, and I'm beginning to think that his rear brakes might have been coming under a little bit of pressure, but If Arnoux continues to put the pressure on him as he's doing, I think that we'll see these turbo cars coming in trouble under brakes. The lighter, more nimble, normally aspirated Ford Cosworth cars could very well come into their own later on in the race. In the meantime, we return you back to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
Down the hairpin, chased by, I suspect, either Niki Lauda. Yes, it must be Niki Lauda. No, there's Pironi in the Ferrari. John Watson behind him.
Yes, of course, if John Watson is suffering from a lack of power with his engine, then he's going to find the Ferrari particularly difficult to pass, and that may be a bit unfortunate for Watson, who could, whilst he can't compete too well with a down-on-the-power engine, he's stuck behind the Ferrari for any length of time. Of course, that would just let the others get further and further away. But he all does not seem to be 100% with his car, certainly.
And these are the two, of course, who are leading the World Championship. John Watson leading the championship, and Pironi, the leader of these two cars, in second position, but neither of them in World Championship points. Pironi 7th and Watson 8th, so they've both got to move up a few places in order to start getting, well, Pironi's got to move up one place and Watson's got to move up 2 places in order to be in World Championship points. And on lap 15, still the turbo of Piquet, as now Watson is coming right up. They disappear behind the bush. Who's going to be first into the bend? It's Pironi, and Watson is definitely closing on the 7th place man, Didier Pironi, in the Ferrari.
Well, I think there are some points to be picked up by the normally aspirated cars here, with 3. Watson having a little look then. He was trying to get inside. Now, the Ferrari was particularly slow away from the hairpin here, we've seen, but of course, once he gets his car straightened up, puts his foot down on that turbocharged accelerator, and of course away he goes, as he duly does. But the normally aspirated cars should stand a chance. The three leading turbos would be quite a surprise to get 3 out of 3 to finish, and one would expect certainly 1 or quite possibly 2 of those cars to go by the end of the race, and of course that will move everybody else up.
And behind them and gaining fast is Derek Daly in the second of the 2 Williams. We know that Keke Rosberg had trouble earlier on. It didn't look as though he did, but he's now disappeared. And this is 7th, 8th and 9th. Didier Pironi in the Ferrari, number 28 in 7th position. John Watson behind him in the McLaren in 8th place, but in the white and green car, there it is, Derek Daly is gaining. Meantime, we're back with Riccardo Patrese and Eddie Cheever going through, and De Cesaris, and Patrese, number 2, is in 5th position, so this is 5th, 6th and 7th.
Patrese surely is 4th, he's moved up.
They complete the lap. There is Riccardo Patrese, and in the Talbot behind him, Eddie Cheever, gaining fast on him. In the Alfa Romeo is Andrea De Cesaris, and leading, it is still Nelson Piquet ahead of Arnoux and Prost, and yes, of course, my apologies, Riccardo Patrese in 4th position, so 4th, 5th and 6th.
Patrese is certainly going very well. He seems to be pulling away from Cheever, and although it's too early for us to get a watch on and suss the gap out exactly, it wouldn't surprise me if he's reeling in the back of the leading group. He's got Alain Prost in front of him, who's losing ground to the 2 leaders, and it would be interesting to see if he can catch him. That looks like John Watson, or is it Niki Lauda?
It's Lauda. It's Niki Lauda, the man who won earlier on this year. Niki Lauda won at Long Beach on the west coast of America in California, and then he finished in 3rd position in Belgium and was excluded, and it looks as though he's in trouble here too.
Yes, well, they're changing his tyres. That's 4 tyres nearly done, but whether they're doing any other work as well, whether that was purely routine, as we know, We've seen before that's a routine job when coming into the pits. Whack on a new set of tyres. They work better than the one sets. And there you go. And that was
De Cesaris catching Cheever.
yes, having a look to try and get past Cheever, who seems to be some of his earlier form in the race seems to be dissipating just a little bit. But Tracy is certainly going very nicely in the Ford engine crowd.
4th, 5th and 6th. Patrese 4th, Cheever 5th, behind him De Cesaris in the Alfa Romeo in 6th position. Behind De Cesaris, Pironi is 7th, Watson is 8th, Daly is 9th, and there, Eddie Cheever, who's come on magnificently this season. As I said earlier on, he was second in Detroit. That's his points position. And Eddie Cheever, who is driving car 25, 7th, equal in the World Championship with 10 points. Niki Lauda still in the pits, out of the car. His race is run. So the world champion of 1975 and 1977, second in 1976, who has got more wins, more pole positions, more anything in Grand Prix racing these days than any of his competitors, is not going to get any points in this race, and goes back into the pit area. Nicky, who was criticising the fire extinguisher arrangements here in Canada after Paletti's car caught fire. And meantime, we are now back again with the flame-spitting turbo of Nelson Piquet, and there is Arnoux behind him, who is catching Alboreto and passing and lapping him. Alboreto, the Italian driver, and there is the position after 18 laps then. Piquet, Arnoux and Prost, with Patrese, Cheever and De Cesaris, with just 1.8 seconds between this man, the race leader, Nelson Piquet, and number 16, René Arnoux, the Frenchman in the Renault. There he is.
Yes, well, they're not getting increasing the gap. Piquet is doesn't seem able to get away. We had that extraordinary situation a few laps ago when we actually had the clock on it, or Murray had his clock on it, and Piquet pulled a second in one lap suddenly, without doing anything very different. Whether possibly Arnoux had a bit of an error and slowed down and lost a bit of ground on the lap. But the odd thing was he did appear visibly to be losing ground all the way around the lap without actually making one sort of huge mess in one particular corner. So it seems rather odd, because that's a big inconsistency in lap time, and then all of a sudden there he's getting going again. Still, we will see how it develops.
And as Jochen Maas in the March comes into the pits for a very rapid tyre change, obviously. Now, this is very significant. There's several cars come into the pits for tyres. Jochen Maas is on Pirelli tyres. Nelson Piquet here is on Goodyear. Behind him, Arnoux is on Michelin. The gap between Piquet and Arnoux is now 2 seconds, so it's just about constant. And there is Arnoux. And whilst we look at the turbo Renault, it's a case of hats off to the BMW engineers, who have persevered with their 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. Heaven knows how many engines they've blown in getting this car into race-leading state. And Piquet, as I was said earlier on, pledged himself as Maas comes out of the pits. Piquet here pledged himself this season to develop with BMW this new engine, because Piquet says the turbo has to be the way to go, and given that I wasn't doing well in the World Championship, I'm just going to plug away at getting this car right for next year. And it looks as though all his dedication is paying off earlier than he or anyone else expected. But the question remains, knowing how unreliable the Renaults there have been in races this year, and ever since they appeared 5 years ago, will the Brabham BMW last? And I was about to say into the pits, so wide did René Arnoux go, but he hasn't, but he must surely have lost time there. He went exceptionally wide. Here's Piquet coming up to lap, I think it's Mercel. It looked like one of the marches.
Yeah, that was a mistake from Piquet there. He just hung a wheel onto the grass just at the turning point of the corner, and that's something that can cause a little slip of concentration. You hang the wheel on, you turn the car in, your outside rear tyre doesn't grip, round it goes, that can be a mistake. So Piquet will have to just sharpen up his concentration. Hopefully, for his sake, he would have felt that and will therefore be more aware for the next time. There's nothing like a little mistake that you notice yourself to wake you up and slap you on the face, as it were, and say sharpen up.
Well, now it's Purcell in the way of Nelson Piquet, and this is giving Arnoux a chance to close up. Unless Purcell moves over and lets Piquet through, which he has done, now he's going to be in the way of Arnoux, a bit of tit for tat, as it were. And Nelson Piquet is going to get the opportunity here with a clear circle in front of him to extend the gap. Meantime, there is Salazar who led, and he's about to be lapped. Sorry, Salazar, who went off at the beginning of the first race. He's never led. And Patrese is now closing up on him. Patrese, who is in 4th position, is about to lap the Chilean in the ATS, who had a lot of trouble getting his spare car ready, having substantially deranged his original race car in the crash between Paletti and Pironi at the beginning of the first race. Patrese goes through on the inside of the hairpin, and there's a battle going on behind Patrese, which is coming up to the hairpin now. Maybe we will see it. Yes, it's Cheever, Eddie Cheever, still in that 5th position ahead of Andrea de Cesaris. So on this, the 22nd lap, it is still in the lead. That man, number 1, the world champion, Nelson Piquet. In 2nd position, just about 2 seconds behind him, a bit less than that, it looks visually now, René Arnoux in the Renault. Still 3rd, Alain Prost in the 2nd Renault. In 4th position, Riccardo Patrese. In 5th position, Eddie Cheever. In 6th position, and the last World Championship point-scoring place, Andrea de Cesaris in the Alfa Romeo. So, Brabham BMW leads. Renault 2nd, Renault 3rd, Brabham Ford is 4th. In 5th position, the Talbot Matra V12, and in 6th place, the Alfa Romeo V12. So a very goodly spread of cars and engines in the first 6.
Welcome back to the 1982 Canadian Grand Prix. Well, so far so good for the turbo cars. Piquet still leads from Arnoux and Prost. Pironi has called into the pits, so I think he's taking on some tyres, but it looked like there was a little bit of trouble coming from the back right-hand side of his car. We're not quite sure yet what that is or whether he'll rejoin. The turbos still seem to be going quite well. The BMW engineers seem to have gone past a bit of a hurdle and made the engine last, although we're still a long way from the end. We're less than half distance covered, and I still maintain that they'll run into problems with brakes, and it also remains to be seen if the tyres on Piquet's car stand up. But at the moment, everything's looking very well, so it could develop into quite an interesting situation later on. I'll return you back to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
And there you see the gap with Piquet coming up to lap Alboreto again. Alboreto, the Tyrrell team, have lost their Candy sponsorship again, so he's in the plain blue livery. And Piquet must get past it. Sura in the orange arrows, number 29. Piquet has passed Alboreto, and now Arnoux will be. There's Salazar's car in the background. Now Piquet passes Sura, and he's got 2 cars between himself and Arnoux, and this gives him a great opportunity to break away. Because Arnoux's got to get past the Tyrrell of Alboreto and the arrows of Sura.
Yes, they're busy amongst themselves too. They may not yet have noticed René Arnoux in the background, but we are coming to an area of the circuit where he's got some decent-sized straights, so if he can just get up behind them, he should be able to power his way past with that turbocharged car. We'll see now if he can manage that. He's got a bit of space to do it. Yes. Well, Alboreto saw him in his mirrors, very politely and very correctly moved over and let him go, and I feel confident that Marc Sura will. But meantime, it does seem to give him a little bit of an advantage to Nelson Piquet. He's extended his lead a little bit, but has proved in the past to have some difficulty in getting actually clean away, to show a clean pair of heels, and that was Marc Sura not being very gentlemanly, making a mess. Oh dear, and Sura driving in a style that was a bit unlike him, completely oblivious to all other road users, and that won't do at all, but I'm sure that was just an error by Sura. Got confused seeing the Renault something side where he expected, and then cards mercilessly Alboreto, who's fighting for the places with him.
And as we see a replay of Prost passing, there goes the Renault past Sura, Arnoux passing Sura. The gap has increased to 2.8 seconds. So that did indeed, and there goes Alboreto nearly losing the Tyrrell as he has a bit of a kerfuffle with Sura. Here is the race leader. Nelson Piquet leading, René Arnoux second, Alain Prost third, Riccardo Patrese fourth. In 5th position, it is still Eddie Cheever. In 6th position, it's still De Cesaris. And the gap, as you see, 2.7 seconds. And John Watson is just 1 place off getting a World Championship point. He's in 7th place. And then behind John Watson in 8th position, it's still Derek Daly in the Williams. And this race is now on lap 27. Lap 35 will be the half-distance lap, and the turbos are still very much under pressure as far as reliability is concerned. It could still be that Eddie Cheever could come through well. There's 3 turbos in front of him. The leading non-turbo car is that of Riccardo Patrese, who won at Monaco in that dramatic race, and he's in 4th place. And then behind him, Eddie Cheever. So we could still see with Arnoux now quickest. Arnoux is putting on a spurt, and De Cesaris, as I talk to you, has got ahead of Eddie Cheever and is therefore up into 5th position. So the young Italian in the Alfa Romeo is 5th. There is the 2nd place man, Arnoux, who's marginally closing the gap by now having put up the fastest lap over Nelson Piquet, who's ahead of him in 1st position, pulling away from Alain Prost. In 4th position, Riccardo Patrese. Up into 5th place goes De Cesaris. Down to 6th place goes Eddie Cheever. Still in 7th, John Watson. There's Piquet.
Yes, René Arnoux is driving visibly well at this particular moment. He's putting in a little bit of a charge. He's got a little bit clear air in front of him after being held up by those back markers, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was another very quick lap that he's putting in. The last lap he did was a new fastest lap for the race, so he's really on a charge, driving very nice indeed, getting good clean lines and getting very much, or appearing to get the best out of the car as far as we can see on on the monitor here.
Well, Rene Arnoux is certainly one of the very quickest drivers in Grand Prix racing. 12 pole positions, 2 wins, 4 second places, 7 fastest laps in his career, and now Patrese is moving up through the field. I'm sorry to keep talking about things you can't see, but we want to tell you immediately that Riccardo Patrese is up into 3rd position ahead of Alain Prost. So, question mark, are the Renaults starting to hit trouble, as they have done so many times this year? Alain Prost, who had fuel injection problems in Detroit, and is still not altogether happy with his injured right foot, which he damaged in that terrific crash that he had in the lead in the closing stages of the Monaco Grand Prix. But anyway, Alain Prost now slipping down through the field, and the Brabhams, the Brabham BMW Turbo of Piquet and the Brabham Ford of Patrese are now in 1st and 3rd positions. Into the pits comes Alboreto. Bad race for Tyrrell, and that's Arnoux spinning. Arnoux in 2nd place, spinning off. Is he going to be able to restart the car? Because remember, he had this problem at Monaco and he couldn't get going. He can't start it. He's getting out. Arnoux retires.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, what a shame, particularly for the race interest there. Now that leaves an interesting situation, because Piquet is now well out front on his own. I don't know what came over Rene Arnoux then. It looks very much from what we can see how it ended up like an unforced error, and if that's the case, we know, I was just saying a lap ago how well he was driving. Certainly he was driving very much on the limit and flat out, but unforced errors, well, that's the end of the spin. We haven't seen why, but unforced errors at this level at the top are pretty unforgivable. It's hard enough when your car is working well, but you can't afford to give away races when it's working out healthily. Arnoux's lost a lot of races with breakdowns this year when he was well placed, even winning the place, but when things are going well, you can't afford to make any mistakes at all as a top Grand Prix driver, because you don't get second chances, and the next time you're doing well and not make any mistakes, the car does it for you. So it's essential that you don't do it yourself. So he'll be kicking himself for that, if that was indeed a mistake, unless of course he had a problem with the car. And in the meantime, as I say, Piquet is out front, but the reliability of the turbocharged BMW-powered Brabhams he's driving is certainly in question. It hasn't got any sort of reliability record yet to go out and finish a race in a healthy state, but it's looking pretty impressive at the moment. And of course, as I said before, more testing miles on it, so Piquet will be keeping his fingers crossed, and meanwhile Patrese will be coming up behind him, getting very hopeful indeed, I should think.
Well, the significance of all that is a multiple significance. There is the race leader. He is on lap 30 in this 70-lap race. It is Nelson Piquet. And up into 2nd place in the 2nd Brabham with the Ford engine goes number 2, Riccardo Patrese, Nelson Piquet's teammate. The turbos now are not showing the dominance that they did in practice. Arnoux out of the race, Pironi effectively out of the race, and Alain Prost dropping back now in 3rd position. In 4th position now is Andrea De Cesaris in the Alfa Romeo. In 5th position is Eddie Cheever, and up into a point-scoring 6th place comes the World Championship leader, John Watson, in the McLaren, and we still have 40 laps to go, including the one that they are on. A lot can still happen in this Canadian Grand Prix, which has already proved to be very eventful. A puff of smoke from the back of Piquet's car. Is he in trouble?
Well, it was definite black smoke that we hadn't seen before, and a little bit of spitting rubbish out of the exhaust, but we expect that from the turbo. But that puff of smoke, and
that's Prost, I think.
It's certainly a major engine blow-up, whoever it is. I don't think it's Piquet. It looks yellow.
It's certainly not Piquet. It is. It's Prost. I wish they'd give us a close-up. It's the very distinctive, yes, it's Alain Prost. The Renaults have done it again. Arnoux went off for whatever reason, and now there is a major blow-up. It looks like a turbo has gone on the 2nd of the 2 Renaults, that of the World Championship leader up to Detroit, Alain Prost, so out he goes again.
Yes, and following the earlier fire, there's probably a lot of overkill with fire extinguishing stuff, but they've desisted, because that was probably just smoke from the blown engine, and that really is changing the race. So the turbos are now falling by the wayside, thick and fast, with the exception of Piquet, who is soldiering on, but he didn't look at all healthy. We saw that ominous-looking puff of black smoke from Piquet's car. So once more, things are looking very well for the normally aspirated cars with their greater reliability as yet.
And as you see, René Arnoux walking away with his teammate Alain Prost out of the race. Both Renaults failed to finish again. And on lap 32, the race leader, Nelson Piquet, there is the only turbo left in the running of any importance, because Pironi is way out of the order. And in second place, it is now Patrese. In third place, he's moved up a position with Prost out, Andrea de Cesaris. So Brabham BMW leads, Brabham Ford second, Alfa Romeo third. In fourth position in the Talbot Matra, Eddie Cheever. Up into fifth place, 2 points for a World Championship position, John Watson. And now onto the leaderboard comes Derek Daly in sixth position in the Williams. And Derek Daly finished in fifth place in Detroit. And so he's going much better than he did at the beginning of the season. Nelson Piquet closing up on the German veteran Jochen Mass in the March Ford, the Adrian Reynard car. And I'm watching that Brabham very carefully indeed to see whether that telltale puff of black smoke that we noticed, James and I, is a harbinger of doom for the Brabham BMW engine. It certainly doesn't look like it at the moment, because Piquet is going like smoke as he passes Jochen Mass's march. There's one of the arrows. It will be that of Marc Surer, because we haven't seen Mauro Baldi, of course. He's failed to qualify. Only Surer got in of the two arrows. So there is Piquet on lap 33, coming up to the half distance. Lap 35 in a race where he took the lead. Nelson Piquet took the lead from René Arnoux on lap 8, and he has held it ever since. The third leader, because there into the pits comes Pironi again. So I think we could safely say that in terms of achieving a World Championship points position, which after all is what they are all after, we can strike the Ferrari out of the running, and that will distress Pironi considerably, because if there is one race that he... Oh, that's strange. He stops, has a chat. Nothing seems to have been done to the car. Certainly no tyres and wheels have been changed. Any views, James?
No mystery to me, Murray. I really don't know what he could have been reporting, especially as they did no work to the car. But so maybe they're just doing a bit of a test session, depending on how much time he lost before in the pits, and to consider themselves out of the race, in which case they don't mind a little pit visit. But it did seem extremely strange.
That may seem an odd thing to say, but of course, if a driver has effect... And now this is going to be interesting, because Pironi has got behind him Nelson Piquet, who is leading the race, and we're going to be able to see an interesting comparison between the turbo... Oh, no, we're not, because Pironi is very clearly not happy. He just lets Piquet go through. And I was saying, it may seem rather odd to say that this is a test session, but if the race is effectively run and you've got a course in front of you, you might just as well use it to try out one or two things, which may well be what Pironi is doing. Lap 34, Nelson Piquet leads, there he goes. And if the Brabham, not the running chassis, but the BMW part of the car, can hold together, it will be an enormous fillip to the Brabham and BMW technicians. Up to the arrows again comes Nelson Piquet, completing another lap into the 35th and half distance lap, and you see there that he is just a little under 24 seconds ahead of his teammates. So with a lead like that, Nelson Piquet really just has to keep up his race rhythm. He must not lose concentration, and go off the circuit. He must keep his rhythm.
Yes, his gap to his teammate Patrese stayed pretty constant for the last 2 or 3 laps now, and I suspect that he'll have having his turbocharged boost turned down as low as he dare, so that he's not putting any more strain on the engine than necessary, but puts as much of the strain of going fast through the chassis by trying to get around the corners nice and quickly and not use too much power on the straights. There he goes, just nipping behind the back marker and slipping by with no problem with that lovely powerful engine at his command. But he will now, of course, be thinking mainly about finishing the race. It's quite obvious he's got adequate speed, although Patrese is no slouch, and he's in the Ford engine car, which is certainly running extremely well. And Patrese won't, I wouldn't think, will be too shy to go and compete with Piquet if he's in a happy position, can get himself in a happy position of being able to get on terms.
Well, the back marker that he passed was Mauro Baldi, who was therefore clearly allowed to start the race. And so both arrows are in the running. Marc Surer, that we have seen being left, Mauro Baldi, his teammate, and I see Pironi's car in the background, and I dare say he will be coming into the pits again as Nelson Piquet goes through.
going to be very, very quick, and I think the turbos will come into their own. But I see we've regained coverage, and we'll now return you back to Murray Walker and James Hunt.
Andrea De Cesaris there is ahead of Eddie Cheever, who's holding on well. De Cesaris in third position. It's still Nelson Piquet and then Riccardo Patrese, and somehow or other Eddie Cheever in the Talbot has got to get past the arrows of Mauro Baldi in his first year of Grand Prix racing. There was Baldi, and no, it's Mark Sura. Mark Sura in our picture loss situation. We see now that we are back with the race again. Eddie Cheever closing up on Mark Sura, the man who for 2 years in succession has broken both ankles in South Africa. He did it last year and he did it again this year, and now he's back, still finding it a bit difficult to walk, and still he's not he's most unlike Sura deliberately to hold somebody back, but he certainly wasn't making it too easy for Eddie Cheever, who has now got through and will be trying to close up on the third place man, Andrea De Cesaris. There is Cheever, very, very tall in the saddle. He's about 6'1" is Eddie Cheever, and he really looms out of the car in relation to his teammate, and his teammate, of course, being Jacques Lafitte. Cheever, number 25, and Cheever drove for Tyrrell last year, drove some notable races. He had some very good places. He finished in some 5th and 6th places the year before that, when he had moved from Formula 2 to the Osella Formula 1 team. He then got the opportunity to join, to the surprise of a lot of people, he got the opportunity to join the Talbot team this year, and I say to the surprise of a lot of people, because Jean-Pierre Jarier had driven extremely well for Talbot, and it was thought that he or Patrick Tambay, who were displaced, might have that second drive. But Eddie Cheever got it this year, and he has certainly shown in this race and in Detroit that he has justified it. And he is now in 4th position, chasing third man, Andrea De Cesaris. So the Brabham BMW Turbo leads with Nelson Piquet. Then the same make of car but with different engine, Riccardo Patrese in 2nd place. There's the third man, De Cesaris. Here is the 4th man, Eddie Cheever. Behind Cheever in 5th position, it is John Watson, and in 6th place it is Derek David. There's the confirmation you see on the caption, and Eddie Cheever goes through. The JS17 Ligier, they are driving this car in the race, they being the Talbot Ligier people, with some reluctance, because at Monaco they produced the new JS19 design, which had special ground effects and very long skirts. The car was excluded in its then form by the scrutineers, who made them cut the skirts back, which completely destroyed the aerodynamics and the downforce. And both Cheever and Lafitte had a dreadful race at Monaco, and they decided, and we're looking at Jochen Maas now, the Talbot team then decided at Detroit that they would have another go with the old JS17 car. I say old, it's only a year old, but Grand Prix technology moves so fast these days that they were regarding it as a bit of a has-been. There is Keke Rosberg still plugging on, and Didier Pironi now fastest, 1:29. That's outside the lap record.
Yes, but it does suggest that they're having a successful test session. They're trotting in and out of the pits, doing a bit of testing, developing their car as they go along, and that seems to be working. Yes, because you see Pironi is, in fact, he let Piquet by the last time he came out of the pits, and he gave him a bigger lead than that, so he's now caught him up again. And of course, Piquet won't be too bothered, but it's slightly annoying to have somebody fast like that leaping about in your mirrors who's actually nothing to do with your race. There's only really an interference, and if he catches him, Piquet might well take the sensible course and wave Pironi through to get him out of the way and to basically remove the harassment.
Well, we haven't said very much really about Nelson Piquet that we are looking at now, but what we have said has rightly been extremely complimentary, and I would like to elaborate on it a bit now, because Piquet could have been selfish instead of selfless, and he could have said, given that the Brabham BMW has got to have so much development done, and he's closing up incidentally on Jochen Mass with Didier Pironi in his wheel tracks, he could have said, given that the Brabham BMW has got to have so much development done, number 2 in the team, which is Riccardo Patrese, could get on with it and do it, and I will drive the better car. But he decided not to do that. I
think he would have been out of a job if he decided to do it any other way, Murray. That he gets pretty heavily treated by the Brabham team, in that they don't have a lot of discussion, or Eccleston doesn't have a lot of discussion with his drivers on a subject like that, and I'm sure the deal was the BMW wanted Piquet to run the turbo car, and I would think, at a guess, that he had little choice, but you may have had other information whether he actually had a choice on the subject.
Well, we certainly have a race between these two. A race with several laps between them, and Pironi goes out very wide, and he goes through and he takes Piquet, but I suspect that Piquet will have let him through, as James said.
Yes, he moved over to let him through there, Murray. He doesn't want the aggravation of Pironi doing his testing behind him in his mirrors. It's distracting and annoying when you've got somebody breathing down your neck when you're trying to pace yourself and look after your car and everything. Well, that was a good, intelligent piece of driving by Piquet to remove that annoyance. And it's a little naughty, really, of Pironi to position himself on the track so close to Piquet, who's busy trying to win a Grand Prix.
Alboreto drawing to a standstill in the Tyrrell. Brian Hinton already out of the race, and it looks as though Alboreto cannot even coast up to his pits, and we will no doubt soon see some frantic Tyrrell mechanics rushing down the pit lane to push their man Alboreto's car into the pit area, because Alboreto is getting out of the car himself, and he's right. If anybody overruns the turn, because it's a very tight turn to miss the pit lane, they're going to go straight into the back of Alboreto's car, as Keke Rosberg nearly did there. Marshall's doubling up, as you can see, through the wire netting, and I'm very surprised that the Tyrrell mechanics aren't already there. They must know that Alboreto is overdue. Meantime, on this, the 42nd lap, there are 14 cars left in the race out of the 26 who started, so that's not at all bad, because there's been a lot of machine mortality on the course, and still the Brabham BMW is racing. I was going to say plugging reliably onwards, but he's doing a lot more than plugging. He's going very, very quick, is Nelson Piquet, because he's maintaining the gap at the moment between himself and Riccardo Patrese. He is letting Pironi, who has unlapped himself once, but he's several laps behind Piquet, pull ahead. And that is the 7th to 12th position then, after 43 laps. De Angelis in the JPS, and then Keke Rosberg in 8th place. In 6th position, it is Derek Daly. In 5th position, in points situation, it is John Watson. In 4th place, Eddie Cheever. 3rd, De Cesaris. And 2nd and 1st, the two Brabhams of Patrese, and number 1 there, Nelson Piquet, the race leader. And it is now a situation where it would seem that with Pironi, how's that second Tyrrell got into the picture now? That's interesting, because we saw Hinton. That's Hinton's car that we saw being craned off earlier on. Well, he must have persuaded them somehow to put him back on the circuit and let him have another go, because Alboreto is certainly out of the race, and number 4 is Brian Hinton.
Well, that's most extraordinary. I don't know what happened there, but these mysteries continue to abound here.
Well, Brian Hinton ahead of Nelson Piquet, who is going to lap him. Brian's a very forceful chap with a very persuasive tongue in his head, and I can imagine there was probably quite a sharp exchange between him and the marshals, who were intent on removing his motor car from the circuit. Brian wouldn't have liked that very much, and would have explained to them in his Derbyshire accent that if they didn't put his motor car back, he would be getting at them physically. Well, that's hypothesis and conjecture, but anyway, for whatever reason, Hinton's car is back on the circuit, where it was previously about 6 feet off last time I saw it, and there is Eddie Cheever chasing De Cesaris. This is the closest race on the circuit as far as places are concerned, on lap 46, and they're battling for third position, these two, with Patrese in the Brabham Ford, with Piquet in the Brabham BMW ahead of both of them, and Andrea De Cesaris, number 22, the 23-year-old Roman in his 24th Grand Prix, 13th equal in the World Championship with 4 points, in pole position at Long Beach. He led the race for a long time until he went off and hit the wall and allowed Nicky Lauda through. But as James and I have said many times, the difference between De Cesaris in 1981 and De Cesaris in 1982 is the difference between night and day. Last year, De Cesaris wrote off something like 14 motor cars, McLarens. He was a very expensive hobby as far as the McLaren team were concerned, and they were pretty unhappy, which is a masterpiece of British understatement, with him at the end of last season, and said to Alfa Romeo, if you want him, you can have him. And it looks as though all the experience that he gained so hardly with McLaren at their expense, their very considerable expense, is now paying off for himself and Alfa Romeo, because he has settled down into a far more mature and a far steadier driver. Third then in the Canadian Grand Prix of 1978, Andrea De Cesaris, who drove extremely well and was in second place on the grid at Detroit, and he seems to be easing away a bit from Eddie Cheever, not a lot but a bit, and in the process closing up a bit, not a lot, but some on Riccardo Patrese, and we still have some 23 laps to go. We're on lap 47, 70-lap race, and I would not be at all surprised to see these two, De Cesaris and Cheever, who are currently third and fourth, moving up at least one place, because I still, in my heart of hearts, wonder whether the Brabham BMW Turbo is going to last the distance. There's a bit of fabric on the circuit that's playing across in the background. And on this 48th lap then, Nelson Piquet, as they go past the rowing part of the St. Lawrence water there, where the rowing Olympics were held, and again we see Jochen Mass, and he is about to be lapped by two other cars, the third and fourth cars of these two, De Cesaris and Cheever. And Cheever has taken back or closed the gap between himself and De Cesaris, which the Italian has opened out.
welcome back to the 1982 Canadian Grand Prix. Nelson Piquet continues to lead. We're seeing a very good dice for third place at the moment between De Cesaris and Eddie Cheever. De Cesaris is holding his cool and not making very many mistakes and seems to be driving well within his limits. And let's all hope that he can finish this Grand Prix and astound a few people. I think that Piquet has a very good lead at the moment. I think at this point in time he'd be starting to hear noises in the engines and imagining all sorts of things going wrong with his car. It's the most difficult time for a driver to be well out in front, trying to concentrate and keep it all together and drive smoothly. But that he seems to be doing, and more power to him. We now return you back to Murray Walker and James Hunt in Canada.
Over this circuit, many of the people will not know because the public address system is unlikely to tell them. But tragic news that the gallant and cheerful Italian who was starting to make his mark on the Grand Prix world by entering World Championship races and was only in his third Grand Prix, has died in the operating theatre as Nelson Piquet crosses the line to complete another lap. To go now in this 70-lap race, and we are looking at the race leader who took up the position that he is in now on lap 8 when he punched his way past René Arnoux. In second place is Nelson Piquet's teammate Riccardo Patrese with just under 19 seconds separating them. Patrese is gaining slightly, but nothing for Piquet to worry about. In third position, the Italian Andrea De Cesaris in the Alfa Romeo, and in fourth place the Italo-American Eddie Cheever in the Talbot Mantra. In fifth position, and still therefore in a World Championship points scoring pace, John Watson, who won at Detroit, and in sixth position Derek Daly. And those first 6 positions have been like that for a long time, indeed nearly for 20 laps now. So it looks as though the drivers have settled down. It looks as though their machinery is running reliably. Really, the only battle in the first 6 places is that between De Cesaris in third position, and now here for a change is Riccardo Patrese in second position, going round the hairpin at the end of the lap. And of course, both he and Piquet will be getting pit signals from their Brabham team manager Gordon Murray and Herbie Blash, and maybe even Bernie Ecclestone himself will be watching the race situation very carefully and will be giving them pit signals. And Piquet will know that he is just about 20 seconds ahead of Patrese, and that therefore he has a cushion between himself and anybody else likely to challenge him. Patrese, by the same token, will know that it is his team leader in front of them, and they will both be trying to hold stations. We look there at John Watson in 5th position on his way to 2 World Championship points, closing up on one of the arrows. Whether it is Baldi or whether it is Sura, I know not until we get a closer look. But anyway, there is the man who won in Belgium to win his 3rd Grand Prix, who won in Detroit to win his 4th Grand Prix, who is this race driving in his 129th World Championship Grand Prix. John Watson, who, with the stimulant of Niki Lauda sharing the equal #1 position in the McLaren team, but who is regarded, or was regarded by everybody, as the #1 driver, to the exclusion of John Watson, has really, John Watson, come to the fore. And you saw Elio De Angelis, there he is, number 11, with his teammate Nigel Mansell out of the race with, we understand, a broken arm as the result of going off the circuit earlier on in the race in his John Player special. And Elio De Angelis is closing up towards the World Championship point situation. And De Angelis, number 11 there, 9th equal in the World Championship. And he has got ahead of him and closing up on him fast, Didier Pironi. looks to me as though there's something dragging on the back of the circuit underneath the gearbox of De Angelis's car. Still some way to go. Lap 52, 18 laps at the end of this one, and Pironi goes through. Really does look to me as though there is something not only dragging but flapping at the back of De Angelis's car. I think it's he's probably picked up that black plastic bag that we saw floating about. Yeah, that's it. Yes, now that I think I know what it is, I can convince myself that it is that, if you follow me. But it's obviously not slowing the car, but I can see it flapping underneath the as I look through the tunnel between the skirts. I can see that it is indeed something. There's the remains of it on the left of the circuit. So Elio De Angelis, another Roman like De Cesaris, although he now lives in Monaco. This is his 49th Grand Prix, the ex-kart champion of Europe. He won the Formula 3 race at Monaco in 1978 by unceremoniously bundling off the then leader. But all that matters is that he is remembered as the man who won at Monaco in that year. And then he joined the Shadow team in 1979. Then he was with Lotus with 80, 81 and 82. And that is Keke Rosberg's car being wheeled away. So another retirement. Keke Rosberg, the Saudia Williams team leader, out of the race, and he was in 4th position, well, probably still is, 4th position in the World Championship. But there's going to be quite a change in the World Championship situation as Riccardo Patrese in 2nd place closes up on Brian Hinton, the man who rejoined from the end of the crane earlier on. He's in the Tyrrell with now Patrese ahead of him. Patrese in 2nd place. Patrese is a man who is benefiting from a move. He spent 4 years with the Arrows team, led in South Africa in 1978, led at Long Beach last year, but somehow never quite got it all together at Arrows for one reason or another. He had this extremely attractive offer from the Brabham team, and I saw Eddie Cheever much closer to Riccardo Patrese then as they came through to complete a lap than he had been earlier on. And you see that now Patrese is definitely closing up on Nelson Piquet. The gap last time was 19 seconds. Now it's just over 60. And if he's gained 3 seconds in that time, he could be much closer to him at the end of the race.
Yes, it's hard to tell at this stage, Murray, whether it's a question of Piquet slowing it up to pace himself to the line to arrive just ahead of Patrese, or whether Piquet is in some sort of trouble. Well, probably not. It's most likely when one is in trouble, the cars usually either stop or go. It's only a loss of power that would really cause that. And I think Piquet, although we saw that rather ominous puff of smoke, which we both took as a bad sign, Piquet seemed to have run healthily for a long time after that. So maybe he's doing very well, and certainly it's full marks to the BMW people to have got this engine to go this far in the race, because that means that they've really done a much better job, and it's very early days of the career of a turbo engine to be doing this well. And as I say, they must be very pleased indeed to be getting this sort of a performance out of their turbo engine. They feel that's very promising for the future.
And it really would be a travesty of justice if Nelson Piquet failed to finish this race. You see there the positions after 54 laps, and there's no change from those that I have been giving you. But looking back over this race, while we watch Nelson Piquet now on his 56th lap in this 70-lap race, therefore 14 to go, looking back on this race, one of the most notable points is that once again the Renaults incredibly have failed, because they have, for race after race, as Piquet closes up on Elio De Angelis, Piquet the Brazilian, De Angelis the Italian, the Renaults for race after race have demonstrated the most incredible promise in practice by being in pole and even second fastest positions on the grid. Arnoux was in pole position in South Africa, Prost in Brazil, then Arnoux in San Marino, Prost in Belgium, Arnoux again at Monaco, and one or other of the Renaults has been in the fastest 2 positions in practice at virtually every Grand Prix this year. But with the exception of the first 2, South Africa, which Prost won fairly and squarely, and once again we see that Patrese has taken a second out of Piquet's lead.
Yes, what they may, of course, what we don't know is have orders to hold station anyway, in which case Piquet can slow it down as much as he likes, so long as he doesn't go backwards all the way to 3rd place man. So they've got a fair bit of room to play with if they're under those sort of orders. We, of course, can't tell from here. We can't see the pit signals. We don't know if there's shedding light on the thing. Anyway, on the Renault subject, yes, I must reiterate what Murray was saying about Renault. It's one of those strange quirks in motor racing. They've been knocking on the door for the last 3 seasons. They look better and better all the time. They improved last year. They got their reliability working very well for the most of the time. They came out this year looking like really hot favourites for the World Championship. Alain Prost certainly seemed to be the car driver combination, the quickest thing around. Prost is a mature and outstanding classy driver, and they did well for the first couple of races, and then they've just run into terrible reliability problems. Very often luck is involved as well as skill and engineering, because even the few flaws that get through the system of setting up cars and building them tend to come out all at once. The old adage, it never rains when it pours, being very true with racing cars. But it's also pouring bad luck on Renault at the moment. They're having all their bad luck at once, but it's really something they should be doing better than they are at the moment. They're favourites in the championship. They've had plenty of time to get the car sorted out, and they do seem to be making a mess. They've had fundamental problems, like they had an engine misfiring in one race. They turned up with the same misfire in the next race, which is pretty unprofessional. So I don't think the organisation is working to maximum efficiency, and hopefully for their own sake they should be asking some questions in-house to try and get the best out of it. They've created a lovely situation themselves. They've got a very, very good car, and they seem to be messing it up at the moment.
Well, and we're looking at Derek Daly, the Irish driver, in 6th position. And there's a lot of fun poked at the Irish, and when he joined the Williams team, the mechanics solemnly put a gear change indication chart on the dashboard of the car, and they also put a circuit map on the car so that he'd be able to find his way round. Derek Daly rose to the occasion magnificently. When he came in, he said at the end of practice, I kept following the map, but there must have been something wrong with it because I kept on ending up back at the pits. Well, he's going extremely well in this race, having finished in 5th position at Detroit last week. He's underlining his reputation, which he lost a bit in Belgium. There's Piquet coming out very wide, and down comes the gap again. It looks to me as though Patrese is consistently taking a lap out of Piquet's lead, and there are 11 laps left to go. So let's not make any false drama out of this, because we really don't know, as James has said, whether they are driving to orders or whether Patrese is gaining.
It does look as if Piquet is pacing it down, because he's got that sort of 5-second margin that one would sensibly apply with 11 to go and just 15 seconds on it. So I would hazard my guess that he's pacing it down, and probably is the 2 teammates will be told to hold position right at the end to make sure that, particularly with the turbo, Piquet doesn't turn it up and start racing for the last few laps. And it looks pretty well orchestrated today.
Meantime, lap 59, there is De Cesaris, still being chased hard by Eddie Cheever. This is the only race within the race, frankly, at the present moment. This is the battle continuing for 3rd position, as we look now at the blue Talbot of Eddie Cheever, and in front of him the red and white Alfa Romeo of Andrea De Cesaris. And it looks as though De Cesaris is going to finish deservedly in the points, and enhancing the reputation that he's very deservedly got in the last few races in this World Championship Series this year. And at the end of this race, we will be exactly halfway through the 16-race World Championship Series of 1982. De Cesaris there third, Cheever there fourth. Ahead of them are still Piquet and Patrese gaining on the world champion. Behind them, in 5th and 6th position still, John Watson in 5th place in the McLaren and Derek Daly. Then in 7th position that we have seen being lapped, Andrea De Cesaris. In 8th position, it is Mark Sura, and well down the field, of course, having been into the pit several times, Didier Pironi in the Ferrari. With the mechanics and the team designer, wants to know all about the machinery, is very good at setting up a motor car, and he got that reputation in his kart driving in Brazil and the saloon car driving that he did in Brazil. His father, a leading politician in Brazil, and Piquet's name is not actually Piquet at all. That's his mother's maiden name. His real name is Sotomayor. He's Nelson Sotomayor, and he actually used the Piquet nom de plume when he was racing because he didn't want his parents in Brazil to know who it was. But having been successful with that name, he has stayed with it. So Nelson Piquet oblique Sotomayor is now on lap 62 out of 70 on his way to the 7th Grand Prix win in his career, having finished 2nd in the World Championship in 1980, having won the World Championship at Caesars Palace Grand Prix at Las Vegas last year by finishing in 5th place in a very sorry state. Las Vegas, unlike this circuit, is run in an anti-clockwise direction, and the heat and the effect on his neck muscles of running in the opposite direction, that's the first time we've seen that shot from the helicopter, really got to Nelson Piquet, and he was in a state of virtual collapse and had to be lifted out of the car and momentarily fainted at Las Vegas. But when he recovered, it was with the knowledge that he was the world champion, and a very worthy world champion he has been and will no doubt continue to be. Lap 63 now. Piquet leads. in what looks like being, with a comparatively short distance to go, the first win for the BMW turbo-powered Brabham. Down comes the gap another second, but there is little doubt in my mind that this is Piquet pacing himself rather than Patrese charging, because it's taken 2 laps for that further second to come off the gap between the two of them.
Yes, it's nice to see Piquet having a good race at last after his misfortune in the Brazilian Grand Prix with the authorities, because he's had a pretty miserable season so far. Things have not been going well. His luck has deserted him, as very often the way with world champions. You get the bit of luck you need all year to tie it all up, and then it all goes away the next year. But it'll be back. Piquet's a very, very classy driver, but nice for him to be getting a bit of encouragement, because he's persevered with his car, and it hasn't been so good so far, but it's been worth it, because at least the car's been promisingly quick, and that's always enough to encourage a racing driver. And now here he is with the thing holding together so far, looking to us from this distance to be very healthy indeed, and only a short way to go without really going too fast, because I suspect Patrese's probably eased up behind him as well, under orders not to race him. No reason for Patrese to be going flat out either. They just pace themselves to the end.
But Patrese must not ease off too much, because De Cesaris in 3rd place, who is only a couple of seconds ahead of the 4th place man Eddie Cheever, is only 7 seconds behind the 2nd place man Riccardo Patrese. So it's going to be a finely balanced thing now with these top 6 drivers on lap 64 in this 70-lap race, getting the balance right between pacing themselves round to finish the race, but not slowing so much that they give away a place to somebody behind them. Nelson Piquet, safe enough, 14 seconds ahead of Patrese. Patrese, 7 seconds ahead of De Cesaris. De Cesaris, 4 seconds ahead of Eddie Cheever now. Eddie Cheever about 20 seconds ahead of John Watson, and John Watson is a fair bit ahead of Derek Daly, who is in the last World Championship point scoring situation, 6th place on this, now the 64th lap of the Canadian Grand Prix of 1982. Piquet surprisingly hitting a curve there. I wouldn't have expected him to do that. Still just a momentarily slight lapse of concentration as he goes into the kink, the left and the right on the far side of the circuit. And as I talk to you, well, there's understeer there from Piquet's car. We're wondering if he's got a bent wishbone. It's not something that one can see looking at the car, and he's going very slow there. Is this, and there's the, and look at it, there's a replay. That's him hitting the curb. He's going slow because it was slow motion. That's nothing to worry about. That was the machinery, the television machinery, and not the Brabham BMW machinery. And Nelson Piquet, as you can see there, is going as quickly as ever. His tyres nice and glossy across all the faces. Down comes the gap between himself and Patrese to 11.2 seconds. I'm refusing to get air-rated about this, because with they're on the 65th lap in this race, so there's 6 laps to go, including this. As I said, I think that curbing was just a slight lack of concentration as he comes up to Mauro Baldi, the ex-Formula 3 champion, European champion of 1981, driving in his first full season of Formula 1 in the Arrows team. Piquet is about to lap the Italian in the Arrows for, I estimate, the 3rd time. I haven't been watching the lap chart that carefully, but through he goes on the blue flag. Baldi courteously moves over, lets the world champion through, and not until I see, if it happens, Riccardo Patrese appear in the same shot as Nelson Piquet would I think that the world champion is in any danger, and I can't see that happening, frankly. And it's John Watson still in 5th position behind the 4th place man Eddie Cheever, who is behind the 3rd place man Andrea de Cesaris, who is behind the 2nd place man Riccardo Patrese, who has got number 1 here, leading the race, the world champion Nelson Piquet in front of him, and still in 6th place it is Derek Daly, and through to complete lap 66, 4 to go, goes the world champion. And if they finish in the positions that they are in now, John Watson will have extended his lead over Didier Pironi in the World Championship by 2 points to 8 points lead, with 28 points over Pironi's 20. But I always think it's tempting fate to say that sort of thing, so having said that, I will say no more about what the World Championship situation would be if they finished in the positions that they're in. And that's Cheever slowing down and stopping. Well, there we are. I said you shouldn't tempt fate. Eddie Cheever, having fought brilliantly to hold that 4th position for lap after lap, punches his side with despair and fury as he gets out of the Talbot and nips over the Armco into the pit lane. His race is run, and that means that John Watson's World Championship lead over Pironi, if he finishes, and there's no guarantee that he will. I would have said that Cheever was going on to finish the race, but I would have been proved wrong had I done so. But it means that Watson will be up to 4th position now, and for 4th position you get 3 points in the World Championship. Well, Piquet completes a lap. He's now into his 68th lap, and he's passing the stricken Talbot of Eddie Cheever, and it means now that on lap 68 we're watching the race leader Nelson Piquet, who has been there since the 9th lap. Behind him, some 10 seconds now, his teammate Riccardo Patrese. In 3rd position, it's still De Cesaris in the Alfa Romeo. But up into 4th place comes John Watson, up into 5th place comes Derek Daly, and up into 6th place, several laps adrift, comes Elio De Angelis in the John Player Special. And De Angelis must wonder if there is what he has to do to get higher than 5th and 6th, because Elio De Angelis finished last year 5th at Long Beach, he finished 5th at Monaco, and this year, sorry, that was this year, and last year he had a string of 4th, 5th and 6th places, and somehow the Lotus people, who have been so brilliant and have actually won more Grand Prix than any other manufacturer in the time that they have been racing, more even than Ferrari, must be wondering what they have to do to get on to the winning podium again, as they have been used to doing so much in the past. And now Piquet is on his last lap but one. Lap 69, out goes the signalling board. And Nelson Piquet now knows that he has a 10-second lead on the last lap but one. And how does that feel, James, when you're in that position?
Oh, very pleasant indeed. Well, you can never count your chickens. That's the trouble. It's very difficult actually to enjoy leading a race. Apart from anything else, you're very tired. You've done all the work. Of course, you know from early on, Piquet knew probably from about lap 20 anyway, that bar the shouting and anything going wrong, he'd won the race. So it's a bit of a shame you don't get the actual excitement when you cross the line, because the only thing that could have happened is it could have gone wrong and the car might have broken down. But certainly, by the time you get a lap and a half away from the flag like this, you're beginning to feel guardedly confident. But your main emotion still is to just at least get the thing over with, and you just pray for the flag to come out. But it's pretty enjoyable. He'll be feeling pretty pleased with himself right now, as certainly will the whole of the Brabham team, because this is a real revival result for them. Very good team, obviously, but running one turbo car this year, there has been a little bit split. Difficult to run two different types of car. You take more spares, more equipment, cars. quite different, in fact, even though they look very similar. And so they've had a bit of a tough time, and it hasn't gone too well with the other car, with the Ford engine car. We have to say split on the turbo, but they're back with a bang, and they must be absolutely thrilled.
Well, Nelson Piquet is now into his last lap, and as you see from the caption there, he has extended his lead over his teammate Riccardo Patrese from 10 seconds to 12 seconds. So he now has less than the 2 3/4 miles of the full lap, considerably less. In fact, he's only got about half a lap now between himself and a very famous victory. It may be his 7th victory, but it's going to be the first for the BMW turbo-powered Brabham, and it's seeing not the beginning of an era, because we've seen turbos at the front for a long time, but it is certainly underlining, and that is De Cesaris on the last lap. Andrea De Cesaris in 3rd position, having seen Eddie Cheever already go out, and that means that John Watson is up into 3rd position. 4 points he will get for a World Championship finish in 3rd position. But now Nelson Piquet in this sad, sad race, marred by the death in the operating theatre of Pelletti, is coming home to win.
Oh, that's a great result for John Watson. He got a bit lucky there, and he's certainly looking like a man with the luck stamped on him this year. Inherited 2 places right at the end of the race. There goes Piquet round the hairpin for the last time, just to drive up to take a check of bag. He can switch off and coast now if he wants to.
And out come the Brabham.